Hello and welcome to the Low Code Podcast. I'm Faraz Khan from iTrack, and we are the global specialists in OutSystems recruitment. With this podcast, our aim is to increase awareness and appreciation of OutSystems and its impact and benefits to the market, and our early adoption is giving competitive edge to businesses worldwide. During our podcast, myself and my colleague Sushil Chauhan will be speaking to IT leaders and OutSystems MVPs on how OutSystems has transformed their businesses and careers. We also hope that by speaking to MVPs on their career journeys, we can inspire developers from all over the world to learn from others who have already been on the path. So let's go.
Good morning. Welcome to Low Code Podcast. I'm Sushil Chauhan. Today I've got my guest with me, Mr. Angus Kennedy. Angus is CTO and co-founder of Systems.io, who are a OutSystems partner and a platform reseller. How are you this morning, Angus?
Morning, Sushil. I'm good. Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to come onto our podcast. And
well, it's nice to be here wherever we are. I mean, I'm not sure where podcasts are, but happy to be here.
Great. Thanks very much. So the first thing, Angus, is just be interesting to learn a little bit about you and your journey to where you've got to today. And I noticed, looking at your background, you're an Oxford graduate and subsequently attended Dundee University to do, was it artificial intelligence that you did there?
Yeah, it was AI at Dundee in Edinburgh. My interest was always in languages. At Oxford, I did classics, Latin and Greek literature and philosophy, but which kind of got me into formal logic, and that was the bridge into AI, if you like. I mean, it seemed to be a jump from Latin and Greek into AI, but there was kind of method to my madness, and it's that interest in languages and logic that got me into software development. Just always enjoyed that. I mean, I suppose I'm a bit of a failed academic. I probably should have spent my life in the university. I have spent a fair amount of time there, as it's turned out, but it's not been a career. It's always been software development that's been a career for me. I ran a specialist testing company at the end of the 90s. Though it's maybe not too much of a twist. I've always thought of testing as being part of the software development practice rather than being a separate thing. So that kind of made sense. I've been involved in architecture, program management, and kind of technical direction. But that's always been, and through a lot of different industries as well, financial services predominantly.
Right.
Banking, both retail and investment, gambling, if that's a financial service, a bit of media and education as well, and now predominantly work in the insurance sector, kind of specialist insurance sector, the Lloyd's market.
Right, and that leads us on to, I suppose, the creation of Systems.io. After doing various roles, you then decided to, I assume, with your partner, found Systems.io.
Yeah, we were doing various things, but it's one of those things that I started evaluating OutSystems and just loved it. Right, so I did a proof of concept on it for a London insurance broker, and I just thought, right, my software architect and myself will have a play with it and see what we can do without reading the manual, without any help. And I said, well, let's see how long it takes us to consume an API from a third-party service and how long it takes us to expose one to the web from OutSystems. And the answer was about half an hour of clicking around and playing with it. And on that basis, I thought, this is great. I mean, I'd had experience of some case tools in the 90s. Texas Instruments had a program called Composer, which did something similar in terms of generating the underlying code for you and providing that layer of abstraction away from the metal, if you like, of the hand coding.
Right.
But when I kind of came back to it and saw OutSystems, which was maybe 20, 25 years later, I thought this has come a long way. And we started using it in anger and have learned some things along the way. And I thought on a business level, this is something that's really come of age now. Want to do more with it, which is why we set up Systems.io less than a year ago now. I think it's September, October of last year. Not a brilliant time to be setting up a new business in hindsight. But you know what they say: if you start a new venture in really bad times, then it'll be easy when the clouds clear again.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the hope, anyway.
And so, just on that about OutSystems, just in case we've got anyone listening who's thinking, "What on earth is low code or what is OutSystems?" Maybe just we could talk about that for a minute before we go a bit deeper into it.
I guess the first point on the kind of definitional one, people make a distinction between a no-code environment where you have end users pulling configuration switches in a platform only. So they're not writing anything like code there. And a low-code environment is meant to be something somewhere in between that and a proper, if you like, proper in inverted commas programming language like C# or using .NET or Java and Spring, etc. The idea is that people can do it faster. They use visual modeling tools and logic statements to generate the underlying code without having to write it. And that's absolutely true. But I think it's more useful to just consider OutSystems and its competitors. Not all of its competitors, maybe, but some of its competitors. It's just being a full stack development platform. It's just a lot faster to use, faster to learn, and gives a higher degree of abstraction. And I think that's the key point than some of the other higher level programming languages that are out there.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I think it's just part of the journey that the software development discipline or practice, if you like, has been on from the beginning. We've moved from machine code to assembler to 3GL languages like COBOL, 4GLs in the 90s. 5GL died, unfortunately, in the 80s, but 4GL is kind of where we're at. And in every step up that chain, you've seen increasing levels of abstraction and generalization,
right,
away from the machine. So we're not machine dependent anymore. And with something like OutSystems, we're becoming platform independent to an increasing degree. Not 100%, but one of the big sells is that somebody with an OutSystems skill set can be developing applications for mobile using the same techniques, same skills, same know-how as they're using to develop for web and cloud and so on. So that's that increasing level of abstraction and generalization is what if we're going to call them low code. I think that's what they've brought us to through that. Really increased productivity on one hand through fast visual modeling, prototyping, and not needing to worry about the underlying implementation or even the deployment of the stack is key. But maybe even the greater kind of benefit of these tools is it lets you see the wood for the trees more. When we generalize, we start to be able to focus on what's really important. But you must know as well that it really excels in some use cases. Legacy modernization, where you want to replace something very quickly that you might just not have been able to afford to do before. Because sitting down and writing it from scratch with a team of 20 developers with niche, expensive skill sets. I mean, you can do this rapid work. You can bring in the guys who know Angular and JS, and but you're going to pay quite a lot to have them there. You're going to struggle to keep them once your project's gone because they want to work for cutting-edge software development houses because they know where they work. OutSystems helps. I mean, you probably tell me it's not that it's particularly easy to find OutSystems developers either in this country, but it's maybe faster to train them. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I mean, OutSystems as a skill set is scarce. It is scarce. I mean, there are developers all over the world, and they can be accessed. And I suppose, especially now with people working remotely a lot, it's kind of much easier to gain access to those skill sets as well. There's people don't seem to be that bothered now about having them in the office. Yeah, so that's been one good thing about the pandemic, is that we've our global workforce can actually truly work remotely.
In an industry like ours, yes, I think it can in software development. I've always worked a bit like that. We've now just opened a office in South Africa, so we've got a small team there, 5 people there now, who provide offshore capability into the UK, but also work for some South African clients. And all of that has been done. I'm just checking my recollection on this. All of that's been done without any face-to-face contact. And through necessity, not through choice. I'd be on the plane to South Africa every week if I had the choice.
I think a year ago, people would have been definitely requiring more outside of office face-to-face time and everything else. But now it's really, people have got realised that a lot of this stuff can be done without that, which is good. I think
it can, the tricky bit is the impact of coronavirus is it's focused the mind in some ways. There's some, from a business perspective, obviously there goes without saying there are a lot of things wrong with it. From a business perspective, it's definitely harder, I find, to win new business. You can keep going at what you've already got. And that's fine, especially in software dev where we don't need daily face-to-face. It's harder to win new stuff. It's accelerating some trends that were already in place. So towards digital transformation, they've really put the spotlight on that with everybody suddenly, desks not cleared overnight, not coming back to the office, put that spotlight on it. So it's forcing us to be, and I'm seeing this from our clients, forcing us to be more people focused, both on our own people, in terms of process efficiencies, how can they work remotely, having that enabled by software, being digital first. People focused in terms of our clients, how can we have better connections with them, both over video, but also in terms of system to system connection. It's driving the requirement to have more coupling there for straight through processing. At the same time, so you've got this, increased focus on people, but you've got a demand, a necessity to be location independent at the same time. So person-centric, location independent, 2 things happening at the same time. Some of which you can fix through technology, some of which you can't. Some of which have prosaic solutions to them. You need 2 monitors on the desk. Software developers have always had 2. The business haven't always. No. You can't do it now. You've got to have 2. So one, I can talk to you here, and I can read the document over here.
Exactly. I mean, we've done that actually ourselves in our own office here. We've got 2 monitors for each person now. So, and it is a lot better. So,
saying that I completely failed to do that. I've got my notes down here. I should have them over there. Preparation.
You practice what you preach. So. Interesting. I mean, so in terms of the insurance sector, I mean, obviously you guys are mainly focused on that and mainly on the old sort of Lloyd's brokers, which is it's probably like the oldest market in London. And then we've got this, the old meeting the new, where OutSystems, which is a cutting edge technology, low code, meeting the old school Lloyd brokers. I mean, was OutSystems something new to your customers? Did you introduce it to them, or was it something they knew about before? Low code, was it a new proposition in terms of solving their transformation issues?
It's a good question. It's new and remains new to the actual brokers who don't interact with it, obviously. In terms of the technology departments, I think people are aware of low code more and more. And are looking into it. OutSystems, I find that, and I'd be really interested to know what you guys think, but I get the kind of nods of recognition now much more when I used the word OutSystems than I
Yeah.
would have done this time last year.
Yeah.
And 2-3 years ago, people would be like, huh?
Never heard of it. Yeah, 2-3 years ago, never heard of anything. Yeah.
I mean, they had in Portugal, they had in Europe, in Holland, in South Africa, interestingly. But
I think
the
they were
UK,
a bit ahead of the curve, actually. Those guys. Yeah.
and being a Portuguese company, I guess that kind of makes sense. So it's been a slow burn in the UK and the US as well. I think OutSystems are making big efforts to kind of turn that around. In terms of your question, the old meeting the new. So the Lloyd's market has always prided itself on being a face-to-face market. Broker meets underwriter, either in the Lloyd's building or more likely in one of the bars and restaurants next door to talk about quite complicated deals that are predominantly done over paper.
Yeah.
And it's sort of bypassed the digitization of the stock market that happened in the 80s around the corner at the LSE and so on.
Yeah.
Ever since, there's been a kind of a push through successive CEOs at Lloyd's to introduce more and more digital transformation. And the current John Neal is very much pushing that same digital agenda. And as I said just a minute ago, the spotlight is very much on that. There's nobody in Lime Street. A friend of mine sent a picture to me the other day, just deserted street. It used to be really bustling. And Lloyd's have said the daily commute is over and everybody's staying at home. So it's accelerated the move towards digital transformation that was already underway. Brokers need platforms that will enable them to transact in whatever way is going to work for the customer, through manual data entry, through APIs that their big wholesale broker clients in, say, the US can connect to directly, through building customer portals, for those clients so that they can have that relationship with us that's 24/7, that's access anywhere, that can work through email, video. Lloyd's have been talking about building a virtual room. I'm not sure quite where that project is at the moment, but one of the biggest problems is just connectivity. So people used to walk into the underwriting room in the Lloyd's building and scan it. Right? So if you know what it's like, there are lots of signs above each of the desks saying this is Chaucer, this is Aon, whatever the underwriting. Not Aon, but Catlin and so on. Lots of different underwriting firms, and people can see who's there and whether or not there's a queue at the desk. And now all that's gone. So if you need to get hold of an underwriter, you're phoning all the time. We haven't got a centralized booking system. So those are the kind of prosaic problems that are being thrown up that we need technology to challenge quickly.
So I suppose it's speeding things up.
I mean, everybody's having these problems. OutSystems' ability to be kind of platform independent to an increasing degree helps, but it's really, I guess, about the speed, isn't it? It's about being able to develop much more quickly than you could before.
Yeah.
To meet these increased demands.
Yeah, so I suppose it's a big change for that particular market in terms of how things were done and now how things are being done now. I mean, do you think that this is a kind of generally the case, not just insurance, so lots of other industries which may have been struggling with their digital transformation for whatever reason are now looking for these solutions which are much faster and solve a whole load of problems which were apparently insurmountable in the past. So how are we going to do this? This is going to take us 2 years or whatever. Now we can do it in 6 to 8 months or whatever with a much smaller team.
Yes, I mean, I think it's the same story we've been seeing everywhere for a while now, right? Which is if you're a new kid on the block, if you're a kind of digital invader with no legacy, you're purely greenfield.
Yeah,
brilliant. You can go quickly. You'll be born in the cloud, and there are huge advantages to be had for existing businesses, for old businesses like the Lloyd's market. But it's not confined to insurance by any means, obviously. We've got, I suppose the question of technical debt is both a boon and a curse. It's a blessing and an albatross. It's a blessing in the sense that if you've got fully depreciated systems all paid for, it's great. They're running, they work. You just need to keep the lights on. The question is, the worry is that the other guy's lights are burning brighter over here, and your bulbs are getting dimmer year on year, and at some point you have to do something about it. And when that point comes, there's a lot to be done. The thing about digital transformation is that it's hard. It's not that people are just ducking it or thinking, oh, it'll be fine. It genuinely is hard, and people get stuck on the horns of a very difficult dilemma, which is the buy versus build dilemma. If you kind of build it down, if I have to build something to replace my legacy systems throughout the enterprise, that's a big project. It's going to cost a lot. It's going to take a long time. Got a high chance of failure. We know that. And we want to kick that decision down the road for a bit, because or get some other guy to make it. Or we buy something in. But if we buy something in, again, at an enterprise scale, it's not going to be cheap. But maybe more importantly, I think I see for a lot of businesses, it means fitting yourself into the system you're buying. The best way to do a buy implementation is to never customize the system, just to adapt yourself to its processes, into the world of SAP and say, yes, I'm your prisoner, because then your upgrades will be smooth every time. You'll never have any issues there, but you'll have to work the way it dictates, rather than building something that serves your business, that fits in with you. And I think that OutSystems helps take the edge off a dilemma like that. That build becomes a more viable option for people than it was before, because of the speed that you can move at, and because it's not just that you write code faster, it's that you get a bunch of things for free. CI/CD pipelines, security, so on built in. You get that for free. You just don't need to worry about it. So it's making some of the DevOps stuff real in a way, rather than just being a buzzword. So the platform is doing some of that for you, quite a bit of that for you now in terms of config management. That again helps make your developers more productive.
And I suppose the deployment's much faster as well, like in terms of getting it into the live environment and so on. So
they've been working. I mean, it's not been perfect. OutSystems is not a panacea. It's not a perfect platform yet. I'm sure they're going to try and make it more and more perfect every time. And they have been putting work, I know, into making the deployments faster, just using text differential, so getting incremental builds, and having to, I think they're talking about being able to avoid the kind of recompile of everything once you do a platform upgrade, which would be great. Those things are helping, but they're already taking many people out of the development, operational, infrastructural hole that you need to put enterprise software alive and keep it alive. You can push bigger rocks with fewer people.
So that brings us nicely onto the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the kind of how has low-code and OutSystems, in your experience with your customers, changed the sort of landscape in terms of how the customer works? And you've just mentioned that, for example, they need a lot less people. And in terms of their IT departments, we've always had the concept of, micro groups doing their own thing on certain areas of the business. And I suppose that becomes more and more difficult if these systems don't integrate with each other. So in terms of the work, the projects that you have done, how's the introduction of low code and OutSystems changed the landscape in terms of the size of the teams, how the teams work, and potentially, are these sort of citizen developer type groups of people in the organizations, are they able to work in a better way using low code, or is that really at very early stages still?
The thing I think you can do now that you could only really do with kind of difficulty and expense before is you can make real a kind of agile product team approach that the industry's been pushing for a long time. I think you can make it much more real now because of the just the faster cycles that the process goes through. So I find that a lot of our clients, product owner can become much more closely involved with the development team in the way they should under Agile, because they get new stuff to see that little bit faster. So they need to have that involvement, and they're getting the reward. So they're seeing something built up, and it's not happening in real time. We don't have business product owners sitting with developers watching screens, appear there and then, but they are coming back 2 days later and saying, we've got this to show you. Is this what you meant? And they can go, no. And so it just speeds up, other than having 2 days makes a big difference to the cycle and how the team forms up, than it being 5 days, for example, before people do another show and tell. So that the increased speed means you get more genuine involvement with the business. That's the first point. I think, secondly, on the citizen developer question, there's still a distinction between the business and the development team. And I think OutSystems, we were open-eyed when we went into this. It's still for the technically minded. It's not as high a barrier to entry as learning C++, but it's still a programming language. You're not that far away from SQL statements. You're not writing them, but they're there, and you can see them in the IDE if you want to look. You need to understand formal logic for the conditions, and I think it can be used by a senior technical analyst very successfully once they get their head around it. I find it less suited to a senior business analyst, and I think the citizen developer thing is still out there. I think it's got an evolution to come. I think OutSystems probably recognize that, and they've just released some new features. Kind of the workflow builder is probably the one that's the case flow management stuff that's moving most into that area. Stuff they released at Next Step this year is enabling end users to directly define a workflow and get it going on a no-code basis with simple logic, simple form design. You just add a field. What kind of field? That's it. It'll appear. You don't need to be involved in positioning or design at a detailed level, and you don't need to be doing any. So they're working on that level, but I don't think it's there yet.
Yeah.
So that's the second point, and I think it leads on to the third point, which is the kind of problem we see still. The great thing is forming these fast moving product teams. The downside is, forming these fast moving product teams, because it moves a bit too fast at times. So we found with one client, certainly, that they go, all right, so we asked you, we said we wanted this, you've built it 2 weeks later, it does that, that's great. Now we want it to do this. We want it to do this. Because they haven't lost we used to be able to make them lose enthusiasm for change, because it would take 6 months before we would deliver anything, and they will be
You're a
grateful
victim
for
of your own
it.
success.
So let's just take it. But now it's like you've got something being released every month that's significant, and something being released every week that's minor. And they go, oh, okay, we could do this, and we could change our process to be like this. Now that's great, and I don't want to knock it as a problem, but it will lead to a certain amount of rework and rethinking. And OutSystems is flexible. You can do a lot of that unless you really try and break the data model you put in place. But I guess, it does come with a kind of health warning around that. You can't give up on design thinking, on spending the time before you touch any platform, any low code development. Start with thinking about, have a kind of view of where you want to get to overall, and do the rapid iteration within the concept of that overall architecture and evolutionary direction you put in place for the business, rather than, if you don't, you run the risk of making it up as you go along.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So it seems like the customer expectations are being heightened as a result of, things being delivered very fast, and then being able to see things. But at the same time, like you're saying, there's a risk that comes with that, with, I suppose, making sure that whatever it is you're doing integrates properly into the bigger plan without messing things up, I suppose. So.
Yeah, I mean, you can see similar kind of developments in the RPA space sometimes, which is, can be a complementary technology for a lot of departments these days. They've got, fast development of new stuff with platforms like OutSystems, but they're also overcoming a lot of legacy issues and process issues with RPA. And people say, okay, so I've got this monthly statement job which takes ages and is complex. Can you automate that with robotics? Yes, we can. And then it's like, all right, well, brilliant. That saved this much time. Where's the next thing? And again, that can just take on kind of look, move approach, rather than a scan the horizon and really set the strategy out. So do the thinking up front before you rush into
all
this stuff.
Are there anything that sort of particularly springs to mind in the things that you have done for your clients? I mean, was there anything that you could sort of look back at and say, actually, that particular thing we did was a real success for us, or actually these particular things caused particular problems for us in the projects that we were doing?
In terms of the problems and negatives, it's another kind of take on the same point that we've been discussing around, which is around the speed question. So, when I said at the beginning, I loved it from the start because I could, build an API, expose it within half an hour. I then spent 6 months kind of unpicking that and realizing how to do it properly.
Right.
And it can be quite forgiving of the rework, but there is a lot to learn. There's if people come from a high code background like I have into OutSystems, you're used to looking in certain areas for solutions that's not the OutSystems way of doing it. So, I mean, I'll always think in terms of array processing, because that's just how I used to do things, and it's just the wrong way of doing it. And so when I see people who have spent a lot longer using OutSystems working at real speed, I'm like, wow, is that how you do it? So there are things that we could have done better first time if we knew the tool better. But I guess that's kind of always true, I guess. And as I say, it is a bit forgiving. In terms of successes, I wouldn't pick up anything in particular. What I like to highlight with customers, is that they're getting more than they thought they were getting with OutSystems.
Right.
And the BPT workflow side of it is the area I kind of try and point out to them, is that all this kind of that's there too.
Yeah.
And you can don't think of your investment in OutSystems as purely being a platform for developing applications in. You've got potentially here something that can help you stitch together third-party activity, email, manual processes, legacy system activities, OutSystems application activities together using OutSystems workflow. And I think that's a really exciting part of the platform that we need to use more and more. And where we have, people have loved that. They've kind of thought, oh, what's this little notification? Oh, it's time for me to do something. That's clever. How did you do that? And we're thinking, yes, that's clever. We didn't do that. That's kind of built in. But that's the great thing about the platform, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a lot of it's already done for you, I suppose. So, where do you see things going in the future with low code generally? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about. I think people always tend to talk ahead of what's actually ready at the moment, but there's a lot of talk about in the future, 70% of the people will be using low code, and so on, especially with the explosion of mobile apps and everything else. So where do you see things going, both at a kind of an enterprise level for customers and I suppose from a consumer as well?
I'm always pretty dubious about those kind of Forrester Gartner predictions that say that 70% of us will be using low code by next Christmas, and then 200% of us will have coronavirus by. I guess its real promise is delivering that ever increasing levels of abstraction. And if it can keep doing that, then I think more people will use it for more. If it can help us build better models of the world that enable us to navigate it that much more sure-footedly and without mistake, I mean, that's how progress happens, and that's how we move ahead in the world, is through generalization and abstraction away from the particular. And that's what I think low code is fundamentally about, maybe more than the speed. It's about helping us build better models. So if they can keep doing that, I think they've definitely got an important place to play in software development.
Great. Okay. Well, that's been very interesting, Angus. Thanks for your insights into all these things. It's been really good learning about the particular things that you're doing as well, and that Systems IO are involved in. So I'm
very happy to do it.
Brilliant. So we'll hope to maybe catch up with you again in a few months, just to see how things have moved on for you and how things have moved on generally. I mean, hopefully by next year we'll be out of this.
Fingers crossed.
Pandemic. Yeah. Who knows? But Great. Thanks very much, Angus, and speak to you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.